Hey guys, Patrice is here with another tier list. Last week I did a Legends tier list, so this week I'm going to cover Weapon tier list. This tier list is 100% my personal opinion, but I also have watched Predators and what they pick most of the time. So it also could be looked at as meta picks for Season 7. Feel free to make your own tier list if you disagree with me and comment it down below. I will leave the link in the description. Also, I will grade weapons of how they perform after you get the core hop up. So for example, Mozambique is D tier on its own, but you will never use it on its own anyway. Most of the times you'll only pick it up if you already found the hop up. So I'm going to be rating like that to save time and not repeat myself. Alright, let's begin. E tier. Weapons that you usually swap out as soon as you find anything else. First in E tier is R45. It's just the worst light ammo pick if we exclude P2020 without a hop up. So as soon as you find anything you end up swapping it out. I think it'd be fun if they would make a hop up to dual wield R45, but I doubt they ever will. I think it's just labeled as forever the starter weapon, which is alright with me. Next up is the Alternator. I personally really like Alternator, but let's be real now, it's only better than R45, other than that you will swap it out. If they ever think of buffing it, I think increasing the rapid fire would be enough to make it a little bit better starter. But in general, I don't think they should, since that going to turn it into just B-Tech R99. I think keeping it where it is right now is actually fair because Alternator is just a starter weapon, something that you pick at the start and that's it. It's actually a bit weird that one of the fully kitted weapons is Alternator this season, because it's so weak it makes no sense to even pick it up. L-Star. L-Star did receive few decent buffs this season. The recoil is easier to control, and if you don't overheat and stop in time, it will cool down in 1.15 seconds, which is decent. But even after these buffs, it's still difficult to use since of the bullet travel and the terrible blinding light it produces. Honestly, I can't see anything when I use this thing, it's so bright. But if you do land your shots, it does a lot of damage, I agree with that. So I guess this depends on skill and preference. Either way, I have never seen one in high ranked lobbies. If Respawn ever wants to move it up the ladder, they would have to make it easier to use. Faster bullets travel and less brighter lights would do the trick. Next is D tier. Weapons mentioned here are okay for some situations, but unfortunately, just because there is better choices, you'll most likely swap these out. Starting with Spitfire. Yeah, I know a lot of people like this weapon since it's very noob friendly. I personally like to use it since I'm allowed to miss a lot of shots and still do damage. But in reality, if you can land your shots normally, then you will always swap out Spitfire for literally any other heavy ammo weapon. Maybe improving the fire rate or improving the damage would bring it higher up the list. Moving to a sniper weapon now, Longbow. If we judge purely off sniper rifles, I will always pick any other sniper over Longbow. First, it needs a lot of attachments to be decent. Second, it needs a skull piercer. And if you have one, you will usually end up picking up Wingman instead. It deals around 55 body damage and around 138 headshot damage with a skull piercer and no helmet, which is basically Wingman but with extra steps. I think if Respawn would increase the projectile speed a little, it would be quite nice, but also could make it a bit OP. So maybe just increasing the body damage, since it's only 55. Maybe that would make it better for most players, because you can't land headshots all the time from far range, especially not on Longbow. That's why people pick Wingman most of the times instead, because it's a better weapon for mid-range and close-range fights. And you can put 2x scopes on it, which is something that a lot of people use snipers with anyway. Next up is the Charge Rifle. It's a nice sniper that deals decent damage and is relatively easy to shoot. If you end up getting the entire charge into an enemy, it deals good damage, but the best thing about it is that it's noob friendly. Since even if you don't get the entire beam in, it will still deal damage and you can still feel good about yourself. It also has no bullet drop whatsoever, so it's even more noob friendly because of that. But if you have a good aim and good prediction skill, you will pick other snipers over this one since they will deal more damage. Charge Rifle used to be OP back in the day when they released it, but now it receives few nerfs. Honestly, I don't really know what they could do to buff it, because if they just buff the damage, it will be a devastating weapon, and since it's like a scan hit weapon, it will be just so much easier to use than any other sniper. Maybe prolonging a little bit the charge itself and increasing the damage so people would have more time escaping the final hit, which would basically buff the damage, but then you would nerf the charge up a little bit, which would still keep it not OP. Now moving to C tier. C tier is great weapons for pubs and in general feel satisfying to use, but unfortunately get outvalued by other picks in higher ranks. Starting with Mozambique and P2020 with hammer point. Mozambique has full ammo now, and together with the hop up it just feels great, especially if you are up close and one shot the enemy that has no armor. If you work with a good team, you could even coordinate who was cracked and play someone like Pathfinder or Horizon to get in fast and finish them off with a Mozambique or P2020. And P2020 basically brings the same value as a Mozambique, but it's just used a little different. Mostly depending on the preference, since they both do the same job. Even knowing how great these feel, I will still pick up Mastiff over Mozambique or R99 over P2020 for the same job, just because they are more reliable, since they do damage on top of the armor as well with no problem. Next weapon on the list is EVA 8 with double tap. Great weapon, specifically if you can land both taps on the enemy. For me personally, I struggle with this, so I usually skip on EVA 8, but I have seen other players use it very well and get a lot of damage done with it. It's a great weapon, and currently it's the most DPS reliable shotgun out there. Like when you use EVA 8, you will know exactly how much damage you will do. When you use for example Mastiff, you kind of flipping a coin. And that is it for the C tier. Now moving on to B tier. Here are very solid weapons that have been balanced pretty nicely, but in the current meta they don't get picked up as often. First on the B tier is R301. Very good weapon, easy to control and use, has nice attachments for it as well. Great for mid-range and close range. R301 is one of my favorites. I have been using it all the time in previous seasons and I still use it often this season. But since they've removed Anvil Receiver, it definitely feels weaker. Same goes to the next weapon, Flatline. You also received a hit after Respawn removed the attachment. But even without the attachment, it's still really strong pick. You just have to get used to the recoil pattern for Flatline. The main problem with Flatline is that it's quite slow, so from close range you will not able to use effectively. In total DPS it's slower than a lot of other weapons on this list, so that's why I placed them in B tier. Now I would like to move on to the snipers on B tier. First one is Sentinel. In Season 7 it has been buffed very nicely. The main buff it received is that now charged Sentinel deals bonus damage on everything, not just shields as it was before. So it does a lot of damage. And also, the base damage of Sentinel has been increased from 70 to 88, which is nice. It still shoots very slow and requires cells to charge, which could be a problem, but I usually pick it only when I have like at least 8 cells, so I never run into those problems. It also feels very satisfying when you actually land a shot, so in general it's a great pick and my personal favorite. And the second sniper on this list is Triple Take. In Season 7 it has a slight nerf to the fire rate, but it's very tiny. Triple Take is still a very solid pick, especially that you don't need core attachments on it anymore. Now it's pretty much super strong as soon as you pick it up. Also it's easier to land shots with it because of the bullet speed. I think Triple Take is a solid weapon from as soon as you pick it up, and I usually use it if I don't have a Sentinel with a lot of cells. And now moving on to the last two tiers and the best picks in current meta. A tier, strong picks that are always picked in high rank. First on this list is Hemlock. This weapon is super easy to use and pros abuse that fact. No matter what rank you are, if you pick up Hemlock you will seem better than you actually are. I guess that's why it's my favorite weapon in Season 7. Respawn has increased the recoil a little bit to make it a bit harder to use, but that barely did anything. It's still very strong pick and I personally use it all the time. It also has super accurate hip fire, which makes it strong for even close range fights. It's so strong that every time a streamer dies by Hemlock he screams out something like "Freaking Hemlock abusers, bro!" So yeah, make sure to use this weapon. Next weapon is Wingman. Wait, what? Wingman not in S tier? Yep, as amazing as Wingman always was and still is, it's not as strong anymore. There's just better picks now, so most pros and high rank players still swap it out. But still, even in its current state, with a skull piercer and 1x red dot scope, it's still a strong pick, and a lot of people still play it and prefer it. One of the huge pros with Wingman is just like with shotguns and snipers, you don't need much ammo on it. 2 stacks of 60 will usually do the job, which means you have more space for nades and heals. Which is why people often pick it up in combination with R99 or a Volt SMG, since they require a lot of ammo and a lot of space. I think Wingman is great where it is and there is absolutely no need to buff it and make it OP again. Next weapon on A tier list is G7 Scout. Scout has received some nerfs and changes over time, but I still count it as one of the best snipers in the game. Also, double tap is great, especially if you are forced in a close range fight, but in my opinion it's not really needed on a Scout. But if you can control the recoil, it is great. You can put a ton of attachments on it to make it more controllable and even easier to use, and it also uses light ammo, which is everywhere. Currently there is esports going on Apex Legends called Autumn Circuit, and I have been seeing a ton of scouts in there. People still love it and still use it all the time. Last weapon for the A tier is Havoc. Havoc is not really OP anymore. It has been changed and made a lot harder to control, but in season 7 they decided to change the pattern to be more consistent. So now if you go and practice with it, you will be able to control it much easier. Especially if it has all of the attachments. But to push it to A tier, or even almost S tier, you have to use it with turbocharger. It removes the long charge up and the first recoil jump is much easier to control, so it's a must pick really. Finally, S tier, must picks. People will almost always swap out any other weapons for S tier picks. These weapons are super strong right now, and also I placed gear package items here too, since those are no-brainers. First weapon is Devotion with turbocharger. This weapon is straight up broken. If you pack it with attachments, you're going to destroy everyone as long as your aim isn't trash like mine. If you watch streamers and you ever seen them pick up kitted out Devotion, you know what I'm talking about. But this statement mostly biased, since whenever I used Devotion myself or others used it on me, it was impossible to win against it. Next on the list is Prowler. There is not much to say here. Currently Prowler feels like cheating, and usually in most situations, if a team gets it in the end cycles, they end up winning the game and getting the first place. Next pick is R99 and Volt SMG. I will place them together since they both do exact same thing, which is spitting bullets as fast as possible. A lot of times I see people running them in combination as well. R99 has always been a good pick, pretty much since season 1. It's super accurate and rapid. The only problem is that it consumes too much ammo, but light ammo is incredibly easy to find. Same thing goes to Volt SMG. It's rapid and just as accurate. In my experience, Volt is even easier to control than R99, and shooting with a Volt on further range is also easier for me. It used to be really hard to get by energy ammo, but in season 7 it's not really a big deal. Just like light ammo, it's everywhere. And since a lot of people run Volts, now you find a lot of ammo on dead bodies too. Both of these weapons have really strong DPS and hip fire accuracy, so they pretty much have no downsides. Yeah, I guess it's easier to shoot long range with snipers, but most fights you will take will be close or mid range anyway. And in high rank, people avoid fighting as much as possible in early circles. In conclusion, R99 is the best light ammo weapon, and Volt SMG is only second to turbocharger Devotion. Another S tier weapon that I think I shouldn't even waste time mentioning is Peacekeeper. Peacekeeper is a must take over any other shotgun or weapon every time. Charged up, it can snipe people on mid ranges no problem. Up close, it deals a ton of damage as well. Oh man, I miss the normal Peacekeeper in the game, but I guess it's good change since all sweats used to have it as their second weapon. Anyway, it's a no-brainer, so moving on. Mastiff. Mastiff is very inconsistent shotgun, and there's a few things you need to keep in mind. First is that shooting headshots is not always the best choice, since it's shooting in a line. You want to shoot at the widest body part to hopefully land more pallets. So I noticed that shooting the chest area is more consistent for more pallets hitting than headshots and doing more damage. Obviously if you are 1 meter away, you can go for the headshot and deal a ton. But if you are like 4 meters away or more, you should go for wider hitbox parts. If we ignore the fact that sometimes you hit for like 13 damage only, Mastiff is the best shotgun in the game, and it can hit for 100 plus damage from one shot if you are close, which basically makes Mastiff 2 or 3 shot kill, no matter what armor they have. OP weapon that is always abused by all high rank players. It feels especially good with Gibby, who has a hand shield, because when you ADS with a Mastiff, it shortens the spread, which equals to more pallets hitting and more damage in total. And Gibby also gets a passive shield on top of it, on his hand. And last weapon is Kraver. Kraver is actually difficult and a lot of people prefer to not pick it up, since the bullet travel is very slow and the cooldown between the shots is also pretty long, so it's really hard to hit your target. But even with all of these cons, Kraver can one-shot headshot anyone no matter what armor they have, which automatically puts it into S tier. Imagine a weapon that can insta-kill basically. It's definitely the strongest sniper out there, and even if you get a single body shot for like 140 damage, you can instantly provide an opening for your team to push. And that's it for the tier list, guys. If you disagree with my list, why not make your own and post in the comments below. This video is entirely based off personal opinion and we all like different things, and I understand that. Either way, I'd like to see what's your favorite weapon to use. Maybe consider subscribing if you like this type of content. I will post more Apex videos soon, and I'm also going to make Cyberpunk videos too. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.